The Dodgers are quietly building a dynasty, and the league should be terrified. What if the most dangerous team in baseball right now isn't even playing at full strength? What if the team sitting at the top of the standings, posting numbers that make analysts uncomfortable, is doing all of this while deliberately holding back? That is not a hypothetical. That is exactly what is happening with the 2026 Los Angeles Dodgers, and the rest of the league is starting to realize it. This is not a story about a hot start that will fade by July. This is not a story about one superstar carrying a mediocre roster. This is a story about a franchise that has constructed something methodically, scientifically, and with a level of patience that most organizations cannot match. And the most unsettling part, the incident that shook the league earlier this season was not caused by the Dodgers doing anything wrong. It was caused by another team being so threatened by Shohei Ohtani that someone allegedly crossed a line that should never be crossed in professional sports. Before we get into the numbers, the rotation, and the structural advantages the Dodgers have built, let's start with the moment that stopped the entire baseball world in its tracks. And if you're new here, this is Hoop Action TV. We are about to hit 1,500 subscribers, and we want you to be part of that milestone. Hit subscribe, drop a like, leave a comment, and share this video with anyone who follows baseball or loves watching dynasties being built in real time. It genuinely helps us grow, and we have a lot more content like this coming your way. The Los Angeles Dodgers were facing the St. Louis Cardinals in what appeared to be a routine regular season game. Base runners moving, fielders reacting, the kind of play that happens hundreds of times across a baseball season without anyone giving it a second thought. But what happened next was not routine, it was not accidental, and according to MLB's initial investigation, it may not have been a spontaneous decision made in the heat of the moment. Cardinals player Alec Burles moved toward Shohei Ohtani, but the movement was not a standard defensive play. Burles made direct physical contact with Ohtani's body. The stadium went silent, medical staff rushed onto the field. Ohtani appeared visibly dazed. In any sport, when a player of that magnitude goes down, the entire atmosphere in the building shifts. But what made this moment genuinely different from a hard collision or an aggressive slide was what came afterward. MLB's initial investigation concluded that the contact showed signs of being planned. This was not a player losing his footing or misjudging a play. The evidence, according to reports, pointed toward something coordinated, and even more explosive, toward possible involvement from Cardinals manager Oliver Marmol. The suggestion that a managerial figure may have had prior knowledge of, or encouraged deliberate physical contact with an opposing player pushed this beyond a standard on-field altercation. It turned it into an ethics investigation. Ohtani addressed it directly after the game. "I was extremely shocked to learn the truth. Actions like that are unacceptable." That quote is significant not just for what it says, but for how Ohtani said it, not with anger, not with drama, but with a calm, measured clarity that made the statement land harder than any emotional outburst could have. Dodgers manager Dave Roberts was less measured. This was a deliberate act. It is not part of fair sports competition. Roberts' response confirmed what the Dodgers organization believed, that this was not a baseball play. It was something else entirely. Here's what that incident tells you about the state of MLB in 2026. Other teams are not just trying to beat the Dodgers on the scoreboard. The competitive pressure has reached a point where some organizations are apparently willing to consider options that go beyond strategy, beyond preparation, and beyond the rules of the game. That is what fear looks like in professional sports. The Ohtani incident did not happen in a vacuum. It happened in the context of a league where the competitive stakes have never been higher, where the gap between the top organizations and the rest of the field has never felt more permanent, and where the presence of a player like Shohei Ohtani on one roster fundamentally changes the calculus for every other team in the sport. Analysts covering the league have noted that the competitive pressure in MLB 2026 is pushing franchises toward the edge of what is legal versus what is simply unsportsmanlike. When one team has assembled the kind of roster the Dodgers have assembled, the response from the rest of the league is not always rational. Desperation produces decisions that organizations would not make in a calmer environment. The consequences of what happened against the Dodgers could extend far beyond a single suspension or fine. League investigations into incidents involving deliberate physical contact, particularly when managerial involvement is suggested, can result in suspensions, significant financial penalties, and organizational discipline that affects the entire Cardinals franchise. The full scope of those consequences had not been finalized at the time of reporting, but the direction of the investigation made clear that this was being treated as a serious violation. The irony of all of it is almost too sharp to ignore. The Dodgers do not need this. They are not winning because of intimidation or psychological warfare. They are winning because they have built a better baseball team than everyone else, and they are doing it while not yet operating at full capacity. As of April 26, the Los Angeles Dodgers hold a 19-9 record. On pace across a full season, that translates to approximately 110 wins. That number alone would place them among the elite teams in recent baseball history. But the record is almost secondary to what the underlying statistics reveal about this roster. The Dodgers' team batting average sits at .278, one of the highest marks in the league at this point in the season. Their starting pitching era is .279, the best in MLB. Both numbers at the same time on the same roster represent a combination that almost never exists. Teams are usually elite offensively or elite in pitching. Sustaining excellence in both categories simultaneously is genuinely rare, and the Dodgers are doing it. Then there is Shohei Ohtani. His projected WAR for the 2026 season is currently estimated between 9.2 and 13, a range that is almost unheard of for any player in the modern era, let alone a two-way contributor. To put that in context, a WAR of 7 is typically considered an MVP caliber season. Ohtani is projected to exceed that ceiling by a significant margin. More remarkable still, Ohtani is currently being projected as a top 3 candidate for the Cy Young Award, an award given to the best pitcher in the league. He is competing for that award as a player who also hits cleanup. The combination of those two realities in a single player has essentially never existed at this level of sustained performance. This is not a novelty act. This is a legitimate two-way contributor changing the structural math of what one roster spot can produce. This team isn't just good on offense or pitching. They're elite at both. That almost never happens. That framing holds up completely when you look at the data. A 2.79 ERA and a .278 batting average are not flukes. They are the product of deliberate roster construction over multiple offseasons. Here's where the analysis shifts from impressive to genuinely alarming for the rest of the league. The 19-9 record and the league best ERA are not being produced by a Dodgers team running at full speed. According to reporting from Jeff Passan, the Dodgers are not chasing 110 wins. That number is almost beside the point for this organization. Alden Gonzalez added additional context. The Dodgers are deliberately rotating their pitching staff, distributing innings carefully, and protecting their arms with a clear October target in mind. This is not a team throwing everything at the regular season. This is a franchise managing a marathon while the rest of the league is treating April like a sprint. Consider what is currently missing from this roster. Mookie Betts has been dealing with injury. Blake Snell has not yet returned. Roki Sasaki has been inconsistent. 3 significant contributors in various stages of unavailability or underperformance, and the Dodgers are still 19-9 with the best starting era in baseball. The scariest thing about the Dodgers isn't what you're seeing, it's what they're saving. That sentence should be the context through which every piece of Dodgers analysis this season is filtered. The team currently performing at that level is not the complete version of this roster. The decision-making structure within the organization, from the front office down through the coaching staff, is oriented entirely around what happens in October, not what the win column looks like on May 1st. This is the kind of organizational discipline that separates franchises with genuine dynasty potential from teams that simply have a good year. The Dodgers have built a system where the regular season is treated as preparation and calibration, not as the destination, and they are doing it while still dominating the standings. When Blake Snell returns to the Dodgers rotation, the configuration that will exist on that pitching staff is something analysts have struggled to find historical precedent for. The projected 4-man core, Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, and Snell, is being discussed by baseball analysts as potentially one of the greatest starting rotations of the 21st century. That description is not based on sentiment or regional bias. It is based on the individual talent level of each pitcher, the depth of the roster behind them, and the methodology the Dodgers use to deploy their arms. This is a franchise that applies data, rest protocols, and workload management with a precision that few organizations match. When you combine that infrastructure with 4 starting pitchers who each individually would be the best starter on most other rosters in the league, the result is something that has no real parallel in recent baseball history. Ohtani's presence in the Cy Young conversation as a two-way player represents something that has essentially never been done at this level. The modern era of baseball has seen specialists dominate each category, elite hitters and elite pitchers, but the combination of both in a single player, sustained over the course of a full season at the competitive level Ohtani is performing at, is historically unique. Other teams have to roster a closer, a rotation anchor, and a middle-of-the-order bat to replicate what one Ohtani roster spot provides. That structural advantage compounds every single game. The depth behind those 4 starters adds another layer. This is not a rotation that collapses if one arm goes down. The organization has built redundancy into every tier of the pitching staff, which means even in an injury scenario, the Dodgers have options that most teams would consider their primary starter. Beyond the Dodgers specifically, MLB in 2026 is operating under structural changes that are reshaping the game at every level, and those changes, in several meaningful ways, benefit exactly the kind of roster the Dodgers have constructed. The league introduced the Automated Ball Strike (ABS) challenge system this season, giving hitters and catchers the ability to challenge ball and strike calls through electronic review. The intention was to improve accuracy and reduce human error in the strike zone. The outcome, however, produced a consequence that the league did not fully anticipate. Umpires, aware that their calls could be overturned, began calling fewer strikes. The psychological effect of potential challenge-based reversal shifted umpire behavior in a measurable direction. The result is a strike zone that has effectively been redefined and shrunk in practical terms. Walk rates across the league jumped from 8.4% in 2025 to 9.6% in 2026, the highest figure recorded in a decade. On-base percentage climbed to .322, the third highest mark since 2016. At the same time, batting averages dropped to a 10-year low, reflecting the tension between more walks and fewer hits as contact becomes more difficult in an era of rising velocity. The game has shifted toward patient hitters who can work counts, draw walks, and get on base through discipline rather than pure contact rate. That profile, a hitter who can read pitching deeply, resist chasing, and weaponize the walk as a strategic tool, is exactly what the Dodgers have built into their lineup at multiple positions. In a league where contact is harder than ever, having Ohtani on your roster isn't just an advantage, it's almost unfair. The ABS system did not create that advantage for the Dodgers, but it amplified it. When the environment rewards pitch selection and plate discipline, and your designated hitter is also potentially your best starting pitcher, the structural math of the sport tilts in a direction that is very difficult for other franchises to counteract. The velocity trend continues upward as well. Across the league, average fastball velocity has kept climbing, making it harder for hitters to generate consistent contact. The paradox is that the same conditions making offense more difficult league-wide are producing more walks, which means runs are still scoring, but through a different mechanism than they were 5 years ago. The competitive dynamics of MLB 2026 are not limited to what happens between the lines. The business structure of the league is undergoing its own transformation, and a transaction completed earlier this year illustrated exactly how dramatically franchise valuations have shifted in professional baseball. The San Diego Padres were sold to Jose Feliciano for $3.9 billion, the largest single franchise sale in MLB history. The previous record was the New York Mets, sold for $2.4 billion in 2020. In 6 years, the ceiling for what a baseball franchise is worth at the point of sale increased by more than $1.5 billion. That is not inflation. That is the sports market value expanding at a rate that would have seemed implausible a decade ago. The Padres, under new management, currently sit at 19-12, placing them second in the NL West, directly behind the Dodgers. The franchise's competitive position and its sale price are not unrelated. A team contending in the toughest division in baseball, in a major market, with an ownership group willing to spend, represents exactly the kind of asset that commands a premium in today's sports economy. The question that the Padres sale raises for the broader league is straightforward. What is the Los Angeles-Dodgers franchise worth if they win another World Series? The Dodgers already represent one of the most valuable sports franchises in North America. A dynasty defined not as one championship, but as sustained October relevance combined with regular season dominance across multiple consecutive years, would place their valuation in territory that makes even the $3.9 billion Padres sale look modest. Franchise value in professional sports is tied directly to winning, and a team that is actively constructing a dynasty is, simultaneously, constructing enormous financial equity. The Padres are a useful reference point precisely because they represent the current ceiling for what the market will pay. The Dodgers, if they sustain what they're currently building, would shatter that ceiling. Bring all of it together, the Ohtani incident is evidence of how threatened the rest of the league already feels. The 19-9 record produced while managing a rotation, protecting injured players, and operating without full roster availability. The 2.79 era, best in baseball, generated by a staff that is not yet complete. The projected WAR numbers for Ohtani that fall into a category most players never reach. The return of Blake Snell pending, which would complete a rotation that analysts are already discussing in historical terms. Then add the environmental context, a league where the ABS system has redefined the strike zone and rewarded exactly the kind of patient, disciplined hitting the Dodgers have built. A walk rate at its highest point in a decade. Batting averages at a 10-year low except for a Dodgers lineup that is hitting .278 as a team. The franchise sale that set a new record at $3.9 billion, signaling what the market believes contention in this division is worth. The through line connecting all of it is a single, precise reality. 110 wins was never the goal. October is. The Dodgers are not managing this season to post the best record in the league, though they may end up doing that anyway. They are managing it to arrive at the postseason with a fully healthy rotation, a lineup that has found its rhythm, and a bullpen that has not been overextended in April and May. Every decision the organization is making right now, the innings limits, the rotation management, the careful handling of returning players, is oriented around being the best version of this team in October, not the most impressive team in May. That is what separates a franchise with genuine dynasty construction from a team that simply peaks early. Dynasty construction requires patience, organizational discipline, financial commitment, and the kind of roster depth that allows you to absorb injuries, inconsistency, and bad stretches without losing your competitive position. The 2026 Dodgers have demonstrated all of those qualities simultaneously, and they are doing it while still holding a record that has them on pace for 110 wins. The rotation that exists on paper right now, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, is already the best in baseball. When Snell returns, it becomes something that the league has not seen in the modern era. 4 genuine frontline starters, each capable of carrying a postseason series deployed by an organization that understands how to use them. That is not a regular season weapon. That is October machine. Every other team in this league is looking at the standings, looking at the roster construction, and calculating what it would take to close the gap. Some of them apparently are calculating more than just roster moves. The Ohtani incident is a data point about organizational desperation, not organizational competitiveness. A team that feels it needs to resort to deliberate physical contact to disrupt one player on one opposing roster has already lost the structural argument. The Los Angeles Dodgers in 2026 have not shown everything they have. The record reflects a team managing its assets carefully. The era reflects a rotation operating without its full complement. The lineup numbers reflect a team missing contributors who will return. And all of it still puts them at the top of the NL West, on pace for historically elite win totals, with a franchise player who is simultaneously in the MVP and Cy Young conversations. A team that hasn't shown you everything it has is not a team you hope against. It is a dynasty in progress, and the calendar still says May. If you made it this far, you already know how to read this sport at a deeper level than most fans. We are days away from hitting 1,500 subscribers on Hoop Action TV, and every single one of you watching right now can help make that happen. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. It takes 2 seconds and it tells the algorithm this content is worth pushing. Drop a like on this video, share it with someone who follows baseball or loves sports analysis done right, and leave a comment below. We read every single one. Tell us, do you think any team in the NL West can actually stop the Dodgers in October? Is the Padres' 1912 start enough to make this a real race? And what do you think the league should do about incidents like the Ohtani play? Where does the line get drawn? Drop your take below, share this video if it gave you something to think about, and if you enjoy real sports breakdowns like this, you'll like what's coming next.